Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. I'm back, and this time I am going to review a tournament that I won yesterday. I came in first place out of 28 people at this legacy tournament. Here is the tournament. You can see Mike Larson. That's my name. They put me under that instead of Be Excellent. Normally you'll see me as Be Excellent, but you can see I won the previous years too. Last year was Cephalid Breakfast, but this year I took it home with Beans. And we can take a look at the list here, but maybe more visually interesting and cool than the list is the photo I arranged and took. I'm not like particularly good at this, but you can see the mana base, a whole bunch of fetches. I did make the decision to play a basic swamp in the sideboard, which was absolutely killer all tournament long. Oh, and the big thing to know about this tournament, I didn't lose a single game. I won 12 games in a row. So it was like, even though I was playing a slow kind of dirtily control deck, never even got close to time because I only played 2 games each time. So let's take a look at some of the other lists. This is my friend Nick Rainey. All these people here are like really good players. Like I went to Eternal Weekend last year. I play all the time on MTGO. These are like strong players, and most of them are deck specialists. Like these two are Delver specialists, both of whom I managed to beat. And dedicated lands, tabernacle type people that actually own a tabernacle and stuff like that. Dedicated Turbo Depths player whom I play quite frequently. And then of course, like this guy only plays burn, and you can see he's got an incredibly optimized burn list, and that's who I played in the quarterfinals. So, this is just like 4 of everything, basically. Terrifying deck to play against, by the way. So, how did I do it? How did I manage to get through? Well, I have great news. A lot of my matches, 3 of my matches were on stream. And for the other ones, I can verbally kind of, I took detailed notes so I can kind of recreate those for you. So in this video, we're going to be talking about, the deck, how I played it, and what kind of matchups I faced. And then we're going to also talk about my sideboard guide, which is freely available. You can just follow this link. I'll put it in the video description. But basically, this is a simple spreadsheet that shows what I think are the most likely matchups. You'll note that Burn is not on here, and I had to kind of like freewheel it. But I printed this out, and it all fits on one piece of paper. If you take it to like Kinko's or something, and then it even shows you like the ratio of in and out. And actually, I made a little mistake here that I didn't note before I went into the tournament. You can also see kind of like the older versions. Like I have 3 other versions that I've used in the past. So this is like the current May 2024 version. But you can see I even use the hypergeometric calculator to figure out like the likelihood of having land in my opening 7, land plus a second land or a Lorien, for example, 81% of the time, which is quite good. And then having an opening force, which, I moved the force of negation to the board. So normally it's like 39.5% if you have 4 for your opening 7. But if you move the force of negation, I think it goes up closer to like 47%. I can't actually remember the exact number. But the list is very simple. Here, we'll look at the picture. The only real change I made was I was on the fence about whether I should have Brazen Borrower or Force of Despair or something like that in the sideboard, and I ultimately opted to put a swamp in. And then I changed my fetches so that I did have 4 polluted deltas instead of just like I evenly distributed the 7 fetches across the different blue fetches. But no, I just changed that. I put this swamp in here, and this swamp came in, I think, all but like one of my matchups. I brought it in because you're either wasting people or you're not. And if you're playing against Delver, you're not going to be wasting them. So you might as well have a swamp instead of a wasteland, right? Or if you're playing against a deck like Burn that has 4 Price of Progress or something like that, you're going to want to bring in that swamp, and you'll probably want to take out, just a Underground Sea, because they're not going to be going after your lands. You just need to have a black source that doesn't deal 2 damage whenever they cast Price of Progress. Other than that, I just stuck with my 1 Spell Pierce, 2 Stifle, 3 Days split. And then, nothing else really of note. This is a very stock list. I am playing all 4 Wastelands, and I do hope to tempo people out turn 1 or game 1, and then switch to a control plan for game 2 and game 3, unless they're on a combo deck, in which case I keep these in. So, again, you can look at my full sideboard guide and everything, but I was just going to go ahead and talk about the matches, and then we're going to watch some of the matches, and I'll kind of narrate over them after. But round 1, unfortunately, I don't have all the deck lists. I just have the top 8 deck lists, and round 1 was against mono black aggro, and I wrote some notes, and I'll just read those notes here about what happened during that matchup. So, game 1. That's beautiful. Mommy will love that. Today's Mother's Day, and my son made her a little kind of paper sculpture. Okay, so game 1, mono black aggro. So this deck, it's got the Grief Scan package. It's got Dark Rituals. It's got scary, powerful creatures that it puts onto the table very quickly. So mono black aggro. My opponent started by Grief Scamming me. He had a Dark Ritual, which he used to cast this new 2-drop that grows whenever you commit a crime. So it's like 1 black, 1 colorless. Whenever you commit a crime, put a +1/+1 counter on this 2/2 creature. And after it has 4 creatures, it gets lifelink. Not a great card, frankly, but I guess it's good enough in mono black aggro, which, again, I've been pretty vocal about this. I think mono black aggro is just like a watered down version of like Death Shadow or, blue-black scam. I think you definitely want to have blue in your deck. I think it's a mistake to just go straight mono-black. But this player adamantly refused. He got... so game 1, he just kept slamming things on the table, and I kept removing them, essentially, until I was able to, get a Beanstalk going and start getting Murktides going, and he would try to remove the Murktide, but I had removal. Well, I think he may have successfully removed one of them, but let's see. I never cast Bowmasters unless it's going to remove a creature. That's how I approach this matchup. And then he did Ritual out Opposition Agent game 2, which was scary, but I was able to both fetch and Lorien Cycle in response to the opposition agent, so I got a basic swamp and basic island, and from there my mana was pretty solid. I had to remove Douthie, and he just kept drawing lands, and I told him, I said, look, man, like, you can complain about like getting flooded or whatever, which he was, but at the end of the day, like, just play blue, and then you'll have card selection, and you won't have to worry about getting flooded as much. But he was just like anti-blue mage, there are some people out there that just refuse to play blue. Anyway, that was like pretty easy. And I was already off to a great start. Like, I had plenty of time to just relax and decompress and go for a walk before round 2. And here is round 2. We're going to watch on video. This is compliment of Boardwalk Legacy, my friends' Twitch stream. So check out Boardwalk Legacy, and thanks to them for letting me play this back with commentary and not copyright striking me. And how do I speed. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit faster. And if you're watching this on 2x already, it's going to be 4x. So it'll go by really fast. So here we go. Justin Ivy. Seems like a chill dude. Dedicated green-white depths player. Justin, if you're watching, I hope you're having a good day. And here I am with my Sultai Beans, and he had this beautiful playmat, beautiful cards. I think he had like a foiled out depths deck. I actually didn't realize he was on depths because some of the things he did like struck me as like more of a straight up lands deck. So let me see if there's a hotkey I can use to. Oh yeah, I can just use the arrows to advance. So we roll these giant dice, and I won the die roll, which was great. So I grabbed my 7. And I think I am going to show them to the camera. So I've got a Trop, I've got Days, Island, Beanstalk, and Brainstorm. So I've got quite a bit of good stuff. And I will generally lead with Island if I'm not sure, because the deck is it's mainly just a blue deck that splashes green and black. It doesn't ever really need both green and black unless I'm casting Witherbloom, which I would rarely do on turn 2. That's usually like a later game play. So we're off to the races here. I've got an island. I've pondered. I like what I saw. So here he discards Mazavith, which I think I didn't see it was Mazavith. And I thought it was Tabernacle because they look kind of similar. So I was like, oh, he's just on lands, because most lands decks do play this card that you must respect, Elvish Reclaimer. So I'm able to Beanstalk, and he here goes ahead and activates it. And with Flagstones of Trollcare, you get to get a land, and then you get to get a second land. Because whenever Flagstones goes to the graveyard, you can go get a Plains. So he goes and gets the Savannah for that, and then he gets the Wasteland. And I think he's going to try to waste me out of the game. But, of course, I'm playing a whopping 22 mana sources if you include the Lorien Revealed. So that strategy doesn't ever work. Like the entire tournament, basically, every time somebody wastelanded me, I was like, cool. And then I just played another land, usually. I don't know if there were... Okay, and I did... again, I respect this so much that even though there's one on the table, I am going to daze and basically time walk myself just to not have to deal with the second one later. Worth noting that that one of the cards he discarded to get Mox Diamond is the Dryad Arbor, the 1/1 creature land, and that's going to come up in a little bit. You'll see what happens there. So here he goes. He's just passing the turn. It looks like he's got 2 cards in hand. I've got a full grip basically. Mox Diamond is card disadvantage, right? You're pitching. And yeah, it doesn't look like he's really accelerating anything. He is 2 Elvish Reclaimer activations away from Dark Depthing me, which I think is his strategy because I don't think he ever attacks me with the Reclaimer Elf, the Elvish Reclaimer. So here he's activating, and I'm going to pour my son some lemonade while we watch and see what happens. Okay, go get the milk. Okay, and so here, I think he's trying to decide what to get. He decides to get a Lush Portico, which is the Surveil land instead. So it's worth noting that I did, while I was a little distracted, I stifled one of his... He keeps his top card. So I stifled one of his Reclaimer activations, which is powerful because, they're essentially... It's like you're wastelanding them, or it's like you're stifling one of their fetches or something, because they're losing a land whenever they activate that. And they're paying 2 mana, and they're tapping their Reclaimer Elf for the turn. So it's pretty good. Stifle is pretty decent in this matchup. I do think I sideboarded out for game 2. I was almost going to say game 2 or 3, but there was never a game 3 all day, because I never lost. Here you go. Please put this back in the fridge. All right, and here we come with the Murktide. He could have just gone and... Bye! He could have gone ahead and gotten a Bojuka Bog or something to control my graveyard, and he may be regretting that now that he's facing an 8/8 flyer. Also, again, Mazavith is in his graveyard. I don't know that I realized that was the Mazavith because, again, I thought it was a Tabernacle. Okay, crop rotation does resolve. I let that resolve. And we're going to see what he gets. I think he does get like a Thespian Stage at this point because he does ultimately he gets another Wasteland. So, he sees my Wasteland and he's going to defensively waste me here, which is fine. And I'll just waste that and he's going to activate it. So it's a 1-for-1, basically. Well, it's not really 1-for-1 because he went down a card to crop rotate. So whenever you crop rot, that's like 2 cards, basically. Which... Again, my goal is just to run him out of cards and not die to Merit Lage in the process. That's basically how I approach pretty much every matchup, is just let them run out of cards. We get a bunch of 2-for-1s, and ultimately we win with a Murktide. And however long it takes to win, it doesn't really matter because we're drawing so many cards that we can counter their threats. We can remove their threats. Yeah, I'm just taking it nice and slow here. It may not look like I'm taking it. Oh, and this is the play. So note that his Dryad Arbor is already in his graveyard. I don't know why he would go. I guess he just wanted more mana, and he slowly realizes, oh, damn, I just screwed up. And I think like this play and a few other plays, like caused him to get tilted. And I don't know why. There was a lot of tension in this game. And again, I'm sure Justin's a super chill dude. I think it was just like he was having a rough time. And, he said that, like, I asked him if he saw anything that I should have done better. And he's just like, I don't play your deck. Like, and I was just trying to get feedback. And then he said, you drew really well, like kind of like knocking my play. But okay. So here's, he decides to keep that active, but he could have, I guess that's a good use of it. He's on the clock. He could die any moment from, okay. And I think this is the one time during the entire tournament that I committed a game rule violation. I drew a card, and I thought it was like EOT or something, like end of turn, but it was actually like my draw step. And I just lost track of where we were in terms of what phase we were in. This is one of the things where it helps to get a lot of reps with paper. So the judge came over and I explained what happened. And so I attempted to go basically untap, upkeep, draw. I did that twice in a row, like 1 minute apart, just because I was really focused on trying to get rid of his thing. But Justin was very understanding and the judge was understanding. He just said I couldn't do that. If I did that 2 more times, it'd be like a game loss, which I do that maybe once every 4 or 5 tournaments. I'll accidentally look at a card. It's not very common, so I wasn't too worried about it. But it is something to note is just getting in reps and having a clear understanding of which phase you're in. And I always very intentionally announce every phase that I am going into and make sure both players understand the state. And here I just made a mistake, but the game goes on and it doesn't change anything. I'm able to get Mystic Sanctuary here. And so he makes this play to endurance my graveyard away. And I'm like, sure, I'll just force that. I do think it's worth forcing just because essentially I had him dead on board, and without the ability to block, I could close the game. Now, this is the sideboard guide that I just showed you that I printed out here. Check it out again. You can come and print this out if you're going to go to a tournament and if you want to play my list. You can also just take that template and make minor tweaks to it if you'd like. I got it from Max Dortion, but he had it for some other random deck, and I just liked the layout. And I mean, you could create something that looks like that. I think a lot of players in Legacy, deck specialists, have their own sideboard guides that they share on Patreon or just tweet out. But yes, mine is freely available. So I print this out the day of, and I bring it, and I also print out my deck list so I don't have to manually fill that in, because this was not like an MTG melee run thing. You actually had to have a deck list, but you can print those on Moxfield, and that saved me a lot of time and stress with my handwriting. And I made sure I didn't have an error in my deck list in case I got deck checked. So here we go. I'm going to fast forward through this, and we pile up. You're able to legally pile shuffle once each turn, and it's not really called pile shuffling because it's not doing anything to randomize it. It's just considered a way to count your cards. But I mean, practically, if you have a whole bunch of lands bunched up, it is going to distribute them a little bit. So yeah, you can do that once per thing. Also, another important thing to note, whenever my opponents present a deck, I always actually shuffle it. I tell them, I look to the side, I say, I'm going to gingerly shuffle your deck. And I do a couple quick mash shuffles. That's another thing that I never just hit somebody's deck and say, sure. Okay, so this is my hand. I have Force of Vigor, which may be helpful. I had a Force of Negation. The reason those cards came in, again, is because I still think my opponent is playing lands. And you might think man, that's really dumb. You're really bad at reading. The decks are pretty similar. And I am embarrassed that I sideboarded thinking that they were playing lands, but it didn't ultimately matter that much. Maybe that Force of Negation could have been a removal spell, which probably would have been better here. Okay, so Lush Portico. He puts the Endurance in the graveyard. Again, the only cards that Endurance effects in this entire deck are Murktide, which will eventually arrive. Just takes time to fill up my graveyard. And, of course, Witherbloom Command, which he hasn't seen yet. I did board in the basic swamp, and I am able to go ahead and fetch that because I know he's playing 4 Wastelands, and I'm able to go up the Beanstalk. So here he's applying very marginal pressure. Also note that sometimes the life totals may not be correct on those big D20s. And the reason for that is I keep track of my life on paper, and I wasn't used to having to update the life total there as well. So if you see something where like I failed to update it, I updated that on paper and I just forgot to do it. I don't want you to think like, oh yeah, be excellent. It cheats and doesn't update his life total in hopes that the opponent won't notice or anything like that. I have a very detailed notation that I use when I'm playing a paper. Like whenever I fetch, I write like the life total and I put an F. Whenever I cast Force of Will, I write a W. Whenever I somebody thought seizes, I write TS. Things like that. So I keep track on both sides of the ledger with details. Okay, Pernicious Deed, very good sideboard card. And I'm happy to run 2 of them. Again, I've preached the virtues of Pernicious Deed because it just answers so much. And you're going to see here, it's a very easy 2-for-1. I essentially pay 4 mana and I get rid of their Elvish Reclaimer and their land. And it can do a lot more than that too if I want to. But right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a land. I'm just going to wait until he activates because I don't want him to know whether I'm going to pop Deed. Here I get my second basic. So my lands are very well set up. Now, he probably plays Choke, and that's a risk. So, Deed is a great answer to Choke, but I opt, after he goes and fetches his land, I opt to go ahead and blow the Deed here for 1, just to get a quick 2-for-1 and not let him get any further Elvish Reclaimer activations. In my humble opinion, whenever you're playing against Depths, you do want to stop Elvish Reclaimer at all costs. That thing will run away with the game. It's arguably the most powerful 1-drop in the format, other than maybe like DRC. I would say Dragon's Range Chandler is probably the best 1-drop in the format just because it fills up your graveyard, it gives you card selection, and it's a 3/3 flying. I mean, the card is ridiculous, but I would say Elvish Reclaimer is probably the second best 1-drop in the format. Okay, so here, he's going to waste my waste, which is fine. That's because he's trying to set up Dark Depths. And sure enough, there's the Thespian stage. So I can untap here. I've got one of my Beanstalks active. I've got a full grip, basically, at this point. And boom, Murktide. So I exile my entire graveyard and draw trigger. And so he's going to go ahead and do this. And I think at this point I have a Force of Will in my hand, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just force this and draw yet another card, and hopefully he won't have another plow. But he does have another plow. But you know what? It's fine because basically the Murktide itself drew me a card, and then that Force drew me a card, and so we're basically even on cards after everything's said and done. Well, I think I'm actually up 1 card, yeah. And then I play this, which, again, doesn't really matter. He doesn't use his graveyard at all, but for some reason, I thought he was on lands, and I was just, like, living in fear of Life from the Loam. When you're up against lands, stopping the Life from the Loam is the absolute highest priority. If you take out the Life from the Loam, lands decks become very weak. They're not really playing at a legacy power level anymore. What allows them to be so powerful is that Loam engine that gets them 3 cards every turn, right? Okay, so at this point, I'm just, let's see what he does here. I'm trying to remember. Like, man, yesterday was a blur. Like, 6 rounds. Okay, he wastes. All right, and at this point, yeah, so I'm just going to dig a little bit more. I'm going to try to find another Murktide. I've got 4 of them. He's already used 2 of his probably 4 plows. So I just had to work through his removal with my, okay, and I pass. And again, I'm just playing patient. Like, I'm seeing a lot more cards than he is. There, he plays a Reclaimer. I think I can let that resolve because I probably have a removal spell or the ability to go find a removal spell. I've got that nice uncracked fetch, which I'm finally going to crack now. And he's going to respond with an Endurance, I think. I think that's what he's doing here. I'm like, cool. You want to Endurance me? I'm just going to Endurance myself effectively, and I'm going to kill your Reclaimer, which I think it's a mistake here that maybe he's caught off guard. Like, I think he should have probably activated it and gone and gotten something. but he didn't. So yeah, I get to draw a card, and basically his endurance was like the ETB generated no value because I was able to effectively use those graveyard cards. This is where he gets really upset, and he's like, "You can't cast that. You don't have any green." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do, because look over there. He's got a Yavimaya." So I think this is where like he was really getting kind of tilted, just because I was playing pretty tight. I think he might have thought I was trying to cheat because of that extra card thing that happened in game one, which we call the judge over for. He might have thought like I was angle shooting or I was trying to trick him or something. I don't know, but it was like a super tense game. So here's the ponder. Yeah. Because of that tension, I think that's why he was so quick to jump to accusing me of like trying to cheat when he just forgot that he had Yavimaya out. And if you want, you can watch the original audio. I've muted it just because I want to be able to talk over it, and it's kind of distracting to hear the banter back and forth. But okay, I've got double Beanstalk in play. I'm feeling pretty good, but he does have double stage, and all he needs is a Dark Depths, and he can potentially kill me. So here, I go ahead and use that, and he's probably like, all right, well, I'm just going to play my Dark Depths since you just used your one removal spell for it. But what he doesn't know is I have a second one. So, because I would have just like hung in there. I wouldn't have just burned my, Merit Lage removal on Endurance when I was at like 16 life, unless I had a second backup. Now, it is true that like the careful thing, since I only have two of them in the deck, would have been to wait. And also note that I'm a little ways away from being able to use Mystic Sanctuary to get it back. And also he still has Bojuka Bog in his deck. So I shouldn't rely on having a second one, but the reality is I do have a second one. So here he activates, and I'm like, cool. I make him pay the mana, and then I just waste the Thespian stage. And he's like, no big deal. I'll just do it again. I've got a second one. And it's true. He does have a second one. But what he doesn't appreciate is that, and he doesn't have anything better to do here. He might as well do this, right? But I do have the card. So his decisions here don't really matter. And I can see how that's frustrating. Like, he doesn't have any agency. I've got this full grip of cards, and he just got lucky and top decked the Dark Depths because I don't think he had any selection or any way to get that. So now that I've got Murktide coming down, I'm going to draw two cards. Murktide's going to be full size, and I think he's like maybe 3 crunches away from death. And we'll see if he can get another Dark Depths and another stage. Like, that's one way he can win. He can buy time. I think he Endurance is here, which doesn't actually change anything. He's trying to put the cards back into his deck because he's got a lot of good stuff in there. So I asked to see his graveyard, and I decided, actually, I don't want him to put all that back in there because it will increase the likelihood. So I go ahead and activate, and I draw a card, right? Like, so, Nile Spellbomb is so strong just because at the very worst, it's like a cantrip, but at the very best, it just like incidentally helps. And here I got my third Beanstalk. I mean, this is like basically unlosable. I'm trying to think of what series of draws from him could stop me at this point. And he might even have like a second Endurance. He's crop rotating, but I just like, I don't really want to deal with that. And I don't even have to pitch cast it. I can just hard cast that Force Negation. Again, a card I wouldn't have in my deck if I had known he was just on straight up depths and not like some variant of lands. But yeah, again, 2-0 on that match. And I'm just going to kind of drag this and see if we can get to the next game. Okay, so this is against the owner of the shop. He's top 8'd Eternal Weekend before. Very seasoned, kind of like non-blue mage. He plays Death and Taxes is his favorite deck, but of course Death and Taxes is not that strong right now, so he's playing Painter. And he's played Painter basically since I've known him. I've known him for like a year and a half or so, and he's always played Painter. So I already know sitting down, he's going to be on Painter. We faced one another at the Hunter Burton Memorial Open, which is a big event here in Dallas. Hunter Burton was a Magic the Gathering player. He was like a very high level, maybe like pro. And unfortunately, he committed suicide. So it's kind of a suicide awareness event in addition. And the proceeds from the event go to suicide-focused charities. So obligatory, like if you're thinking about doing anything like that, don't do it. People do not want to see you do that. So yes, please talk with a professional. But very cool event. And so I faced the same guy, Will Buck, owner of Boardwalk Games. I faced him at the Hunter Burton a couple months ago. Exact same matchup. I was also playing Beans, and I think I crushed him. So he was already kind of going into this like I'm doing great. Like I won the first 2 games, but now I've got to face Mike with his draw tons of cards deck. So pretty strong hand. Yeah, I got the double Brainstorm, Bowmasters. I think I have a Wasteland in there, which is very important because the most common way that a Painter deck wins is not through Painter Grindstone, but through Construct tokens usually. And I'm pretty scared with this opening. So he just comes right out of the gate swinging with Engineer. And so I've learned the hard way that you always force Engineer or somehow disrupt it if you can. Stifle the trigger is okay, but really you just want to force it. And unfortunately he has the Pyro for my Brainstorm, which I'd rather him Pyro my Brainstorm than Pyro a Force of Will or something like that. But you can see me like nervously kind of sifting through my hand, trying to like figure out, okay, like I got to solve this. He's got the combo now. It's turn 2, right? Because of that Lotus Petal and everything. Like I have 1 land in play, and next turn, if he has like an artifact land or something, he can basically bring back the Painter and then he can kill me. Or if he has Ancient Tomb, well, he'd need an artifact of some form. He has 1 card in hand though. That is the saving grace of the situation. So I'm not expecting to win this game. His opening was just too strong, but check this out. So he's got this, I think I beat him, I tempoed him out at Hunter Burton really badly, like with Murktides. And so he's like very careful about like managing my graveyard. He doesn't want me to have a lot of cards. So I'm quickly building up cards, and look, like he already exiled that 1 card, but I've already got 3 instances of sorceries in my graveyard. So, it is likely that, a Murktide could come down from his side of the table. I can see how he'd be really afraid of that. So, again, this guy is a really strong player, but he's tilted. Like you can just kind of tell from playing against him that he's like, you can sense the fear in the air, right? So what he does here is I think he's drawing a card. Is that what he did? Yeah, he went ahead and drew a card. And I'm going to go ahead and respond by just removing his. So this is the same play that I did against Endurance in the previous round, right? Like when people try to rip your graveyard out, just have that in your hand and be ready to cast it because you can get a lot of value. And here I think he makes a mistake. He does sacrifice his Grindstone, which is half of his plan to get back in the game, just because he doesn't want me to Murktide. He wants to have that on hand in case he needs it. Or maybe he's thinking, okay, well, I'll draw into something better. But, already having the Grindstone on the table, like he's pretty close. So we'll see Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Now, I'm not sure if he had this in his hand when he decided to do what he did, but this makes sense because he can just give any creature the Goblin Engineer ability if he needs to. He might even be able to, somehow return the Painter to play. Okay, and this is a big play. So I've got the Wasteland that I've patiently held. And so I'm going to ping him, and I'm going to start getting the beats going. He hasn't been activating Tomb or anything, so he has plenty of life. I'm going to Lorien Cycle again, and again, I'm just filling up my graveyard. That's what this deck does. It fills up his graveyard, and graveyard's a resource for Murktide, and it just keeps drawing cards. And slowly, like he's got 1 card in hand. I've probably got like 3 or 4 at this point. Waste it. Yep. You don't mess around with the Urza Saga. You always get rid of it. Like I can wait a turn. Now he's going to start being able to exile cards with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Fortunately, I'm going up the Beanstalk, swinging in. The life totals are a little hard to see. We didn't know where to put the dice exactly. But I think after this round, like there's like some little markers or tape that they put on the playmat so we know where to put the dice so that they'll be within view. All right. So I've got a ton of mana, which is great. And he doesn't really have a lot going on. So I'm just going to turbo out some Bowmaster. Okay, and here he makes a mistake. In response to me Bowmastering, he bolts it, and he immediately like realized, oh damn! And so I do get the amass trigger creates a new token. So yeah, that was definitely a misplay on his part, and not the only misplay he makes during this game. Again, great player, but I think he's just not playing at his best right now, and I think it's because he's intimidated because I beat him last time with this exact same matchup, Painter versus Beans, and it wasn't even close. It was like maybe the fastest round one of my life. Okay, so this is the big play. I've got 2 cards in hand. I've got Lorien on the stack. I'm like, okay, 2 Beanstalk triggers, and then I'm like, Force of Will, pitch, Brainstorm, 2 more Beanstalk triggers. So at this point, I just draw 7 cards. I go from 0 cards in hand to 7 cards. And I attack. And I think, I don't even know if he takes a draw, but I think he just scoops it up. Yeah, he does look at his hand before. But, I mean, just look at how backbreaking that was. Drawing 7 cards in one turn. That is the Beanstalk dream right there, that you're going to be able to Lorien revealed into Force of Will with 2 Beanstalks out. Okay, yeah, and he puts the tape down. Again, shout out to Matthew Basket, who is a great dude, super chill dude, serious Magic the Gathering player, and proprietor of the Boardwalk Legacy YouTube channel or Twitch stream. So, again, going back into my sideboard guide here. Just gonna go ahead and click through this. All right. Now, let's see how I board in Painter real quick. So it is one of the ones that I dedicate a lot of time. So I take out one of my underground seas I bring into Swamp just because they often have Magus of the Moon or even straight up Blood Moon. I take out one of my Beanstalks. You don't always need to have all 4 Beanstalks. Some matchups, it's just not that big of a deal. And then I take out all my tempo cards, and then I take out my edicts because they don't really hit that much. It's much better to have Dismember because it's basically a one drop, and your life total doesn't usually matter when you're up against Painter. What unless they go the construct route. What you're really interested in is being able to quickly stop them, kill like their welders or their engineers, and then 3 Hydroblasts, 1 Force of Vigor, and 2 Deeds. And Force of Vigor's like pretty big here. Okay, so the game has started. Just going to get my Hedge Maze. Shout out to Alex who traded that to me the other day. 13-year-old kid up at Boardwalk. All right. So Ponder. I keep what's on top. Just play out another tap land. This was a pretty rough hand because I had a lot of, and unfortunately I'm not really able to do much other than force here. I don't like forcing and pitching. I pitch a Murktide. Murktide early game, just pitch it. Don't worry. Like, you may think you have this line, but against Painter, I'm not the beatdown by any means. I'm the control deck. So it's fine to pitch my Murktides. I don't have to try to tempo them out. Also, they have like 6 red elemental blasts. This is the card I need to be stopping. But again, I already stopped 1 and he had the second one. This is a really key punt on his part. He forgets the trigger. So I'm like, dude, I'm sorry about that. Like, we're in competitive REL and everything. Like, technically you passed the turn. I've already drawn my card and everything. Like, and he's like, no, it's cool. It's cool. And so he was chill about it. But yeah, he missed that search your library trigger, which is a big deal because he could have gotten a Phyrexian Dragon engine. And here, I mean, maybe it wouldn't actually matter that much anyway because I'm about to like just wipe his board. And I do indeed. I think I like Murderous Cut or Fatal Push this. Oh yeah, just Murderous Cut again. Such a good card when Beanstalk is out. Yeah. So I get to draw a card off the Beanstalk, and he has basically nothing on the table. I Lorien revealed, and he just scoops. Yeah, like that was a very quick concession. I don't know what he had in his hand, but he was like, he's a great guy, but he was not having a good time playing against my Beanstalk deck. So yeah, that was a quick one. All right, now let's jump over to round 4, which is the last one that we have on film, and then I'll just verbally describe the other ones. Oh, check this out. One of our, where is it? I saw it for a second. There was a cake. It comes on frame. Okay, check this out. It says, "Bye, Tom. You are already dead to us, or you're dead to us," or something like that. And he has these magic cards. This Tom, he's like moving to a different city. Very experienced, like very trophied. I guess he's got a lot of accomplishments over the decades of his Magic the Gathering career, mainly playing Delver. But like one of the cards is like, "You are already dead." I think the other one is like, but they're all like cards about like, "You're dead to us" type stuff. And it was just really funny. And Tom saw it and he cried. Matthew said he almost cried. 45, 50-year-old dude. The notion of him crying at this cake. But he's been a pillar of the Dallas legacy scene. And we hope he comes back to play. But either way, I'll hopefully get paired up against him at like Eternal Weekend or something. So, here we go. Going back in for, it might be a while actually, because that was a really quick round. Let's see. Right back for round 4. Okay, so here we are. And at this point, we were trying to figure out, like, okay, we're both 3-0. Can we draw? So I was talking to GPT and doing some other stuff and trying to figure it out. But my understanding is if you are 3-0 in a 5-round tournament, there's 28 people playing. Like, I think you can draw your last 2, and you're like guaranteed to top 8. And that's what I did. I went ahead and drew round 4 and round 5, but on the condition, I always say to my opponents, like, look, I will draw you just so we don't have that stress, but I do want to play it out. And so that's what we did. Both round 4 and round 5 opponents, both Delver players, we drew, and then I proceeded to beat them, which you can watch right now. This guy, Preston, super chill dude, like the chillest of dudes. Really fun playing against him. He's a good pilot. I don't think he made any play errors that I saw. Like, played really tight. And so did this other gentleman whom I'll describe the match in a minute. All right, so we get our opening 7. I keep, which, the deck was very kind to me throughout the tournament. All 6 rounds, I was able to, I think I mulliganed like 2 or 3 times the entire day. Because like, I'm just looking for a combination of lands and spells. This one I had double Wasteland. I knew he was on Delver. But I was like, also, he's on Delver. Like, every card's going to matter. I'm just going to keep these Wastelands. And, I don't proactively waste Delver. Sometimes this is the Grixis one. So he has, I think, 3 Volks. Let's take a look, actually. We can see, because he top 8'd it as well. I think he has 3 Volks, 3 Underground Seas. And this is the other guy, 3 Volks, 3 Underground Seas. Their lists are almost identical. One of them had an extra stifle. One of them had a Brazen Borrower. That's like the only difference. So 74 out of 75. Well, actually, I don't know if their sideboards are slightly different too. Maddening Hex is kind of spicy. But for Preston, we can take a look. He's got double Counterbalance, which is a terrifying card. He's got none of these other cards are really that impactful, other than he has 3 Pyroblasts, which very good. So the only cards he's going to likely bring in against me are the Pyroblasts. Here, also Pyroblast, only 1 Counterbalance. So probably similar in terms of how John boarded. But let's get back to the game. So this is game 1, of course. We haven't sideboarded yet, but I just figured I'd take a look at their deck list real quick and talk about the sideboard while we were there. So he's going to ponder. I am going to look at my hand, which is, again, a lot of lands, which I like to see against them. So I do go ahead and waste here. I'm not sure why I wasted aggressively. I think it's because I had so many Wastelands. I didn't really have anything to do. I'm waiting around for good cards to arrive. So I think the fact that he pondered, I can't remember if he shuffled after he pondered. Let's see. No, he kept. So one of the things was he may not be expecting me to waste there. So maybe he kept cards and he's only got like 1 land or something. And so it's just kind of like an off balance thing. Like, again, my deck is a tempo deck to an extent. It's not a true tempo deck in the sense that it just pretends to be a tempo deck during game 1 if it needs to. But I decided to go ahead and do that. So I fetched my island just because I don't think I had any other colored sources in hand. Again, I apologize that my hand is not like angled in a way that we can see it from this. I was so focused on the game that I didn't really think about that. I may show my hand in a little bit. So he did have a land, and he also had a wasteland. He wastes me, I waste him. So he goes and fetches. Again, there's no reason not to force him to use the fetch there. And I'm able to Lorien cycle with his fetch on the stack just in case he does have Stifle, which he does have. He has 2 Stifles in his deck. So that was a smart thing to do. Because I didn't want, at this point, like him having wasted, me having used both of my wastelands, I really don't have a lot of recourse if he just starts, slamming wasteland, if he's got a third wasteland or a second wasteland rather. Okay, so wait, let's take a look at my hand here. So it looks like I've got Underground Sea, which I just got. I've got 2 Murktides, which I'm not going to cast any of these cards into days, I don't think. Unless he hangs like a Bowmaster's out. Or I'm sorry, if he casts the Bowmasters and I have to kill it, I will potentially kill it. If he casts a Delver, then I will attempt to Bowmasters it even with the days out. Because I've considered getting that 2-for-1 valuable enough to risk the days. That's generally how I approach casting cards against Delver. Like you have to have a really good reason to, but always trying to play around days is a folly because a lot of times they won't have it, And I mean, even if they do daze you, it's not the end of the world. Like that daze was probably going to get pitched to a force or something. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound. I'm going to turn the sound off. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to actually make this bigger. Yeah, I just want to make sure that like the recording software just picks it up, so I'm going to keep it like this for now. Okay, so get rid of the threat. That's always like what you want to do. And then I had my extra mana. He's still tapped out. I'm going to go ahead and cycle. And this time I think I'm going to get, I'll get the trop. I mean, again, I definitely prefer having black mana to green mana. That's why we play 3 Underground Seas. We only play 2 Trops, but I do play the Maze. Okay, so I'm counting to figure out like whether he can Murktide and whether he had. I'm trying to figure out whether he would have Delirium with Unholy Heat. Let's see. Is he playing Unholy Heat? He's not. But I have had my creatures killed by Unholy Heat. Here he's playing Molten Collapse. So it could be that Unholy Heat is only played in the Teamer Delver variants because neither of these gentlemen were playing Unholy Heat. So I may have been playing around Unholy Heat unnecessarily. I just thought of that a second ago. Okay, let's get back to the video. So I do make it pretty big. Well, actually, I exile mostly lands. Any forces. So it's good that I kept like a lot of instants and sorceries in the graveyard. So I've got 3 in the graveyard. DRC, again, the most powerful 1-drop in the Legacy format, in my opinion. I'm going to get rid of this. But I can't immediately get rid of it, so I think he may be able to accrue some value from this. But since he is delirious... He's very delirious. I can go ahead and play a second Murktide, and then it will have to crash into that. And I may do that. Yeah, that's the play here. And note, I'd rather delve away cards than pay mana. Let me just double check. I had 5 cards in my graveyard. Okay, yeah, I had 5 cards. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't inadvertently cheat. I couldn't tell if it was 4 or 5, but it is 5. So I did delve all 5, and I was able to keep my my land untapped. It comes in as a 5/5, and then I've got a card that I don't mind if he dazes it. Ponder. I mean, I would actually probably be happy if he dazed it, just because that's forward momentum for me. But yeah, I always do kind of like the important spell first, and then subject the second one to a possible daze. So here he's going to get a trigger. And he's probably trying to find his own Murktide. He very quickly puts those back. There was like another DRC, which is a suicidal DRC at this point because it's going to be crashing into my Murktide here. So he opts not to keep that. Okay, so he unfortunately has to send his DRC into my Murktide. And so I swing. Now he's back with the second DRC. I don't even know why he really plays it. He doesn't have anything else to do. because I can just hold up my Murktide, but I'm not going to hold back at this point. Like, I'm at 18 life, which is a great position to be against Delver, so I might as well attack. And he opts to not block. He can always block. Well, actually, he can't block next turn. So, yeah. Because the DRC will never get an opportunity to block again unless he can somehow remove the Delirium through like a Murktide of his own. So he gets a trigger here. And this is a pretty key play. Well, it's not really key because I'm winning by such a huge margin. But he does... he swings in as he is obliged to do. And now he's going to... okay, and I was at 15. I was keeping track on my piece of paper, but it wasn't reflected on the life total. I have Brainstorm on top, which is a great top deck at this point. He doesn't have Bowmaster mana. So like the Wastelands and stuff have been successful in keeping him off Bowmaster if he had it. I'm not sure exactly what he has in his hand at this point, but I ping him, and here, in desperation, he stifles the trigger. And I don't think about this until later, but like, okay, he's going to draw, I'm going to ping him, and now I'll be able to kill him because I've got 7 power. But actually, this has Summoning Sickness, which he quickly reminds me of when I'm about to kill him, because it just came in this turn off of the Bobble trigger. He stifled the original one. So that means I have to wait an extra turn, but it's not a big deal. Like, I'm at 15 life, I can wait a turn. And he does not have some sort of miracle spell. I don't actually even know what he could draw in his main deck to get in that. Maybe if he had land and like Volcanic, yeah, but he's at 1, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. So, okay. Game 2. So sideboard, I'll go ahead and talk about my Delver sideboard. You'll notice that Delver is right on the far left-hand side here. It is the first thing that I, how do I make this bigger on Windows? There we go. It's the first thing that I plan for whenever I build a deck is like, what's the Delver matchup? Like, frankly, if your deck doesn't have a good Delver matchup, you shouldn't play that deck. Like, every deck that you play, the litmus should be, can it beat Delver? And if it can't beat Delver, it's got to be like incredibly well positioned against the rest of the format, because Delver is always going to be the most overrepresented deck at the top tables. Like, we saw 2 Delvers in the top 8 here. The Hunter Burton Open that I was talking about earlier, I think there were like, I don't know how many Delver decks. Let's take a look here. So if we go to Grixis Aggro, I think we go back a few months. Let's see. I'm sorry, this is like the fastest way I know to find it. I have to kind of scroll through here. But I just want to make a quick point that there's a lot of freaking Delver. I mean, Delver is like, this type of Delver is 6%. This type of Delver, which is also Delver, is 6. So 12% of the meta is Delver. See if I can go far enough back to find the Hunter Burton. Again, I could go search for it, and that might actually be faster. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Let's take a look at this tournament. Okay. Top 8. Delver. Beanstalk control by another very skilled pilot. We can take a look at that in a second. This is also Delver, Canadian derivative. So 5 Delver decks in the top 8. And then there was this Pox deck that I lost to, which is humiliating because like I don't think it's a particularly good deck. The player who played it played pretty tight and everything. I think it was just like kind of a confluence of bad things that I lost to this deck. First of all, if you notice, my sideboard does not have Pox on it. It doesn't have Burn either. But sometimes you get paired against those and you need to be ready. But yeah, I did lose to that, and that knocked me out of top 8 contention pretty quickly. But again, I'm thrilled that this. Let's take a look at this guy's list. So very similar to mine, except he's playing a Bayou, which again I've switched to playing the Hedge Maze. I don't like having any non-blue lands in the deck that I don't have to, especially with 4 Wastelands. Yeah, same creature suite. He's not doing the main deck Leovold like a lot of people are. 2 days is. I think this is almost exactly the original Pokemoke list. He's even playing Sauron's Ransom, which I've stopped playing. He's playing a Thoughtseize, which I've stopped playing. And yeah, very stock list. Nothing to note here other than the fact that he's only playing one Spellbomb, and I think Spellbomb is so good that you should definitely be playing 2. And Turok is very hard to cast on a 3-color mana base, especially with Kicker. And Veil is a terrible offensive card. Or it's a terrible defensive card. It's really only a good offensive card, in my opinion. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. We'll get back to the game. But here is how I board. So I board out a Swamp and I replace it with, or I board out a Wasteland and I replace it with a Swamp. Then I've got my all 6 of my tempo cards come out. That's it. Pretty simple, right? And what do I board in? Like long game stuff. 3 Hydroblasts. These are great against, obviously like Price of Progress, which both of my Delver opponents were packing Price of Progresses. And it's also just really good at stopping opposing Pyroblasts. Because that's very common. Like somebody wants to Pyroblast your Murktide and you Hydroblast their Pyroblast, right? Or of course, stopping the number one drop in the format, DRC. It functions as kind of like Fatal Pushes 3, 4, and 5. Then Carpet, I only have 1 of it, but it's strong. Yeah, so that's it. Basically better mana, and then the ability to kind of manage their graveyard, because if you can manage their graveyard, their deck's not that scary. Like if it's the turn before when they're likely to cast a Murktide and you just wipe their graveyard, great. If you've got a Murktide, or if you've got like even like a Bowmaster's out and they're attacking you with DRC, and you can like remove the Delirium in combat, that's really strong. Okay, so we're gonna get back to the game here. So after the sideboarding, I mean, again, we're not. This is not a high pressure game because we've already drawn for this game. So we're playing to get better. Which, I mean, to my opponent's credit, like I think most of them were up there playing to get better. The ones that were like spikes that really wanted to win, that were up there to try to win money and stuff. Frankly, those were the people that got really tilted when I beat them. But everybody else was super chill. Okay, so all right. Here we go. Bowmaster's coming in very early on, which, again, you just have to accept that this is going to happen and take a few hits. Eat your medicine, so to speak. All right, and this is a huge play. So this resolves, and I can immediately Bowmasters around Daze and remove his Bowmasters. But, rarely is there just one Bowmasters. It's like when it rains, it pours like lightning, can strike the same place twice, so to speak. Or what is it? They say sneezing, like... sometimes when you sneeze, you rarely just sneeze once. You usually sneeze 2 or 3 times. That's kind of what it is like with... so he has Bowmaster's Supremacy, but I've got a chump blocker on the table. I have removed... Like, we've gone 1 for 1 here. He's able to cast his cantrips. I am not able to. And I'm just going to kind of skip ahead a little bit further here. Okay, so he's got Wastelands. He's going to try to take out my mana, but, the fact that he's given me 2 free mana of any color each turn is pretty powerful. So we're going to see how powerful that is in a second. So I draw my card. At this point, I think I may have a Murktide in hand. Let's see. It's hard to tell from my hand here. Okay, so basic land, always welcome in the Delver matchup. Again, I'm grateful that I swapped out one of my Wastelands for a Swamp here, so I can have, Wasteland-proof black sources for all my removal. Because how do you lose against Delver? You fail to remove their threats. Really, that's the main thing. They don't have card advantage. Like, the longer the game goes, the more favored you become. But, yeah. Oh, okay, so I'm able to remove that. And I'm just, like, thinking about, like, how much mana I have floating and doing the math. I'm just going to exile 1 card here. I want to keep my graveyard fat for Murktide. All right, and I just swing in because I'm not planning to block. I'm going to let that orc hit me a few more times. It's actually kind of almost embarrassing how many times I let it hit me because I just don't want to waste removal on it. Because if I can get another Bowmasters, then I can just trade 1 for 1 with it, right? So he's got a Delver. All right, and there is some pressure. I'm at 13 life, but I'm not feeling that much heat. I'm more worried about this token, this orc token, probably at this point, than I am the Delver, because the Delver has to flip first. But it does make sense to probably hold back the... I mean, I could offer a trade, but like life is not what it's going to be about. I'll be interested in seeing whether I attack here. Okay, so that's one of my 3 Wastelands that are still in my deck. I'm going to play the Murktide using 2 blue mana. And yeah. I'm going to go ahead and tap most of my stuff. Yeah. So I have to exile 3 cards here. And I exile 1... instant sorcery, so he's just going to be a 4/4 Murktide, but that's big enough to stop a flip Delver. So he comes in with the Pyro, and here we go, the Hydro pattern. So I've saved my such a good card in this matchup. Like, I really believe every deck that's playing blue should try to fit in 3 Hydroblasts. All right, so he's brainstorming to aggro flip his Delver, which I don't really know why he's bothering with that, but if he has a Lightning Bolt, then that's a good reason. And I think that's what he does. Let's see here. So he does flip to reveal Lightning Bolts, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I will happily take that trade. Again, I'm not going to risk him swinging in. Like, this is basically saving me 6 life, this Murktide. Yep. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but you're going to bolt it, right? And he's like, yeah, let's just do it properly. Okay. So you're going to take the 2 from the Orc, and then I'm going to bolt it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Again, Murktide is just a wall early game. It's only till late game when you've seized control of the game that you really want to try to start attacking with the Murktide. And in fact, when I describe game 5 or round 5, I can kind of tell you a little bit about what happened there. Okay, so I'm able to Lorien Revealed using the Carpet mana. Again, this Carpet has been massive. I've been able to use the mana almost every turn. I just drew 3 cards. I can't really, let's see. Okay, yeah, and that makes sense. And unfortunately, I tapped my lands wrong, but I go ahead and like decide, I want to draw a card off of this. Like, I mean, he could slam a big Murktide here, but I think I've got that covered. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him use his graveyard this way. And so what he did here is he grabbed a bunch of non-sorcery, non-instant cards, which tells me he probably has a second Murktide in hand. And he's planning to grow the other Murktide. Unfortunately, unless I can remove this Murktide, I can't really safely exile his graveyard at this point because it'll buff his thing. But yep, I got it. And so going Beanstalk with the Carpet mana into going Murderous Cut, exiling my cards. I mean, that is just backbreaking. I get to draw a card, clear it, and here is where I missed out my mana. I should have kept a black source open. Do I have a black source? Or I should have used like Carpet mana in a way that like I could do that because I have to exile his graveyard, but I don't get to draw a card. Again, embarrassing. But it's important to catch these things and like say, okay, I need to remember that next time. Like, even though it's like several, if I had thought a little bit more, I could have done that properly and drawn that card. So it is a punt. All right. And even though we're really far ahead here, I'm like, okay, I've got to get rid of this Orc token somehow. Do I burn a Fatal Push on it? What do I do? Because I just have to do that. And I forgot to attack too. That was another loose thing. I think that's the only time that I forget to attack during the entire tournament where I was like, oh man, I should have attacked. I got a free damage. Every little thing matters. Like you'll see like, well, you won't see, unfortunately it's not on film, but like both in my round 5 and round 6, there were games that I won the game with 1 life. So every little life point can matter, especially in a burn or Delver matchup. Okay, so I think that's a Wasteland, which I'm not going to crack. There's no reason to crack it. Like, he's got plenty of mana, and I'm actually getting mana from him every turn to the point that, like, if I draw a Murktide, I can basically cast it without even exiling anything if I want to. My Bowmasters are going to close the game pretty quickly here. Yeah, I mean, this deck is very threat light. It plays 8 threats. And yeah, like, that's enough, in my opinion, because you're drawing a lot of cards. You don't need your threats till late in the game. So... Yep, and here comes a Murktide. It's not a strong Murktide. I misunderstand this Murktide, so I do force it, but I think I lose track of the fact that it's actually a 3/3. For some reason, I think it's 5/5, so I'm not able to attack in. But there was like a force block situation where he would have had to block, and I could have just killed him here. Yeah, so I got a 4/4. I could have just swung. And, well, I wouldn't have killed him, but I would have killed his Murktide instead. Like, I let him live. Now, I've got a giant Murktide now, and it's not really going to matter. There's a little bit of a mix-up in terms, like, I do get the draw trigger, but I accidentally here, I thought the Murktide was like a ponder or something, because, so I counted it as an extra thing. No, wait. Oh, I think that happened at a different point. But anyway, the point is, I didn't play 100% tight here. I'm not, like, super happy with my play because I could have ended the game a turn earlier. I had lethal on board. I just got confused about how big that Murktide was. And I also do regret like not being able to cantrip off of Nihil Spellbomb that one time. And of course, forgetting to attack. So there were at least 3 things that I did during this game that I was unhappy with myself about. But the important thing is like acknowledging that you just made a mistake, but not letting it cause cascading errors, right? Like don't let yourself get tilted. Just stay focused. And what I like to do in between rounds is get up, just put on my headphones and go for a walk. Just a walk around, like if it's in like a hotel convention center or something like that, I'll walk around that. Or in this case, just walking around kind of like the strip mall parking lot where this is located. So let's go ahead and there's some other interesting matches here. If you want to watch them, this is like the Grixis Delver versus Painter matchup. Again, this is on Boardwalk Legacy. I'll leave a link to this in the video description. But I want to very quickly talk about what happened after that. So let's see. Oh, Preston. Oh, he came in second. So the guy I just beat was second place in the 78-person Legacy tournament, 2 months ago. Very experienced. And the guy that I'm going to play now is also like a really strong player, but he didn't top 8 this tournament. So I'm just going to go back to. Okay, so this is the guy that I played, John Wynn. So round 1 was like a 20-minute game. Let me see if I have my notes. All right, I don't actually have notes for this one. I'm just going to verbally... Actually, I have life totals. 1 second. Okay, so I think I can find the life total... May not be able to, I'm flipping through this big, life total thing I have here. I may not be able to find it in time. I don't want to waste your time. So, basically game 1 was very kind of slow and deliberate. I was able to disrupt his, early kind of delvers. I think I actually successfully bowmastered one. And this is where I bowmastered into days to kill it. That was pretty damn exciting. And then after that, we just kind of settled into bowmastering one another's bowmasters. The kind of play patterns that people complain about when they're like, they need to ban bowmasters and stuff like that, right? Very much that sort of stuff. But I was able to just keep him from winning, essentially. Like, how do you beat Delver? You don't die. And he did not find a single lightning bolt the entire game, which was amazing. He may have used a bolt to stop one of my creatures. I think he may have bolted like a Orcish Bowmasters, but that's it. Other than that, he did not have any direct damage. So he got me down to 1, and I'd already gone through like 2 or 3 of his Bowmasters. So basically, he just has to draw his 4th Bowmasters, or he has to draw one of his 4 lightning bolts. But I have a Bowmasters of my own on the table that's penalizing him every time he uses a cantrip and is growing my army. And eventually I just swing with the lethal Bowmasters army. So Bowmasters definitely was the definitive card in that matchup on both sides of the table. Game 2 was a lot quicker. I think I was able to use a combination of Hydroblast to stop like critical cards like DRC, Dragon Rage Channeler, and he just never was able to get off the ground. I was able to get my Murktide in pretty quick and make short work of him. Again, that was another match that we played after having split. We both wanted to play. This guy's a super chill dude. If you ever run into him, John Wynn. He wears glasses. He's got like really short hair, like kind of like basically just take the clipper and run it across your head. That's his hairstyle. And then we go to quarterfinals. So the story with quarterfinals is nobody wanted to stick around. It was late. We were tired, but this guy is like really competitive. And so we don't technically know that it was him that opted to play, because we all have like these Pokemon cards. Like a leaf is like a piece. We're going to just split top 8, and like the fire is, no, we're going to fight. And I do think that it was him. Everybody else seemed to think it was him. But he always plays Burn. He plays Burn in Modern. He plays Burn in every format. And he's a pretty aggressive Burn player. Like, I mean, to make top 8 with Burn, which is, in my opinion, is a very underpowered deck, that says something about his ability as a Burn pilot, and the fact that everybody else disrespects Burn and doesn't really have anything to stop Burn. Like, I do technically have Witherbloom commands in my deck, that can, gain 2 life and drain 2 life, but that's not going to make a big difference if, you've got like Eidolon out, or if you've got, Fire Blasts and things like that, right? So this is an incredibly intimidating deck to play against. And game 1, I'm going to read my notes. Game 1, I knew my only chance was to win with Murktide. Fortunately, my opening hand had one, along with Lorien revealed, a Force of Will, and a Bowmasters. I get to play first since I had superior standings, because I was, I think, 2nd seed or 3rd seed, which I had 100% match win percentage or game win percentage. But because I drew twice, I was actually like, I think 3rd seed or 4th seed, but it was still higher than his seed. So I get to play first, and he opens with Goblin Guide. I take a hit from it, but then the second attack, I'm able to ping his Goblin Guide and block with an Orc. And I also drew a land in the process, because Goblin Guide is a 2/2 haste. Every time it attacks, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a land, you get to put it into your hand. So I actually drew like 4 cards off of Goblin Guide this game. I quickly fill up my graveyard using like Lorien Revealed and just trying to counter his stuff and casting cantrips, and then I'm able to cast a pretty big Murktide. And it's pretty terrifying because like he was hellbent basically, but if we do the math here, he's got like 18 lands in his deck. Oh, so I drew a lot of creature removal as well, like Fatal Pushes and stuff. So I was able to keep his permanents out of play. But if he'd drawn Exquisite Firecraft, that's like uncounterable 4 damage, right? Like that would have just killed me. Even so, I stabilized at 1, but let's see, he has 30 burn spells. So half his deck is burned. But he drew the wrong half of his deck. He drew some lands and this 2 turns in a row, and I was able to kill him. So I end the game with 1 life remaining. Game 2, I boarded my swamp, and I hope to only play a few lands because look at this. Boom, 4 Price of Progress. I don't want to run into those. Also, he probably boarded in the 3 Red Elemental Blast. I don't think he boarded in anything else. Rolling Vortex doesn't really make sense against me. This card is really good against like Uro decks though, which, having played Uro, you can still lose. So I had lost to this against the same burn player. I had 16 life, and I had Uro in play. And my opponent was able to, through Fire Blasts and Price of Progress, kill me in 1 turn, do 16 points in 1 turn. So it's a scary deck. Again, it's an underpowered deck, and people who say, oh, I'd never lose to burn are exaggerating. Like, you are going to lose some games to burn. But fortunately, I was able to win both of them. And that's because I aggressively mulled to Murktide, and I did everything I could to keep my non-basics lands to a minimum. There was one guy who played against the same player, and he, I think it was John Wynn, and he had 3 fetches out, and he never cracked them. And then when the guy Price of Progress, he just fetched all 3 of his, or he cracked all 3 of those fetches, and he just failed to find. He took 3 damage instead of 6 damage, and that was the deciding kind of gameplay, the play of the game that kept him from death. So he was able to convert like with his Dragon Rage Channelers and his Delvers. Okay, so this is game 2. He potentially has Pyroblast from Murktide, so I'm going to prioritize getting my Hydroblast. I got 3 Hydroblasts in, and I not only draw 2 Hydroblasts, but I also ultimately play out enough lands that I'm able to Mystic Sanctuary one of my Hydroblasts back on top of my deck. He fires off like a bunch of Lava Spikes. He fires off Skewer the Critics. He fires off. So I'm taking a lot of damage. Again, I can't find the exact life total, but I think I dropped down to maybe 9. But I get the Murktide out, and I've got so much counter magic that he basically just. So he attempts to Price of Progress, and I Hydro it, and then he Price of Progress again, and I force it. So that was really his only path to victory, was trying to deal damage in chunks of 4 or 6 at a time. And because I was able to stop those, I was able to kill him with the Murktide before he could find a Pyroblast. So again, if this guy was the person who wanted to play top 8 because he wanted to make more money, Because if we'd split, I think it was like $150 each, split 8 ways or something like that. But if he had just done that, he would have gotten $150. But because he played me and he lost, he only got $50. And then everybody who was top 4, we all split after that, and we each got $200. So it's like bottom 4 each got 50, and then top 4 got 200. So I think it's fair. I definitely don't begrudge people for wanting to play off the top 8, but I mean, you are risking things if you don't just split. And so in this case, he lost out on like $100 for that one decision. And this match was ultimately like $100 game. Like if I had lost, I would have gotten $50, right? So this was like a high stakes game, I guess, if you want to think of it. Like if $100 is a lot of money to you. Considering the entry into the event was $35, I was very happy to, get my $100 back, so I could, or $200. So I guess I netted like $165, which is not bad for like a day's Magic the Gathering. I'm not complaining. But yeah, this is the list. Again, it was super fun to play. I loved the basic swamp, and I think even though that's kind of fallen out of favor, that was the original Pokemonkey tech, is having a basic swamp in the sideboard. I would encourage it. I genuinely think that is good. So I've talked a lot. I hope you've learned a little more about what it's like to play this in paper. I hope you enjoyed my commentary on those 3 matches and me describing the 3 the 3 matches that I played off camera. If you are considering picking up Beanstalk, I strongly encourage it. I love this deck, and I think it's going to love you as well. Do not underestimate Pernicious Deed. That only came in like 1 matchup, I think, against Depths, but it was so strong. Just knowing it's there, being able to reach for it, I love it. But again, like, use a responsible mana base. Don't use 18 lands. Try to play 3 Lorien Revealed if you can. I cast Lorien Revealed like maybe 4 times, 5 times the entire thing, and I was cycling it constantly. I was pitching into Force. Just such a great card. I don't know that it's a 4 of. I can't figure out how to make it a 4 of because I'm not going to go down to 18 land, but it's just great. Anyway, I'll stop singing the praises. I don't want you to think I'm getting all high on my supply. Like, yes, the proof is in the pudding. This deck can work. I got a 501 MTGO the other day. I got and then of course I went and won this 1K with a bunch of deck specialists, people who've been playing Delver for 3 years, people who've been playing lands for 10 years. It felt great. So hope you have a fantastic day. And until next time, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.